Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to another bone-chilling journey through the world of the unknown. If you're new here, make yourself comfortable, grab a warm drink, dim the lights, and prepare for a night of eerie tales and whispered legends. This channel is dedicated to exploring the most haunted places across the country, delving into the dark and mysterious histories that have left behind lingering presences. Tonight, we turn our attention to Louisiana, a state steeped in bayou mysticism, Creole elegance, and some of the most terrifying hauntings in the United States. From the moss-draped cypress trees of the swamps to the winding backroads that stretch endlessly into the darkness, Louisiana is a land where the supernatural feels disturbingly close. Its rich cultural tapestry, woven from French, Spanish, and African American traditions, has given rise to countless ghost stories, voodoo legends, and inexplicable phenomena that continue to haunt those who dare to visit. Whether it's the phantom figures that roam the halls of abandoned plantations, the eerie whispers that echo through forgotten cemeteries, or the shadowy presences that lurk just beyond the veil of reality, Louisiana is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we will be diving deep into the most notorious haunted location in the Pelican State, the infamous Old River Road. A stretch of highway in St. James Parish that has become synonymous with tragedy, mystery, and the unrelenting echoes of the dead. From the blood-soaked history of the plantations that line its path to the ghostly apparitions that have been seen wandering its fog-laden curves, this road is more than just a scenic drive, it is a corridor of terror that has left even the bravest souls shaken. We'll uncover the chilling stories behind the hauntings that plague this cursed route, hear first-hand accounts from those who have encountered the unknown, and explore the historical events that may have given rise to these eerie legends. So, if you're ready to step into the shadows of Louisiana's most haunted road and uncover the secrets hidden within its winding paths, press play and join us on this spine-chilling expedition. But be warned, once you enter this world of ghostly echoes and forgotten souls, you may never look at Louisiana the same way again. The cursed path of Old River Road, tucked away in the heart of St. James Parish, Old River Road stands as one of Louisiana's most infamous haunted stretches of highway. Known for its eerie atmosphere, this winding road is lined with towering cypress trees, their gnarled roots twisting through the earth like skeletal fingers reaching out from the grave. The road itself, once a bustling corridor during the height of Louisiana's sugar plantation era, now serves as a silent witness to centuries of tragedy, betrayal, and bloodshed. But beyond its historical significance, Old River Road has become a hotspot for paranormal activity, drawing in ghost hunters, historians, and thrill-seekers who hope to uncover the truth behind its haunted reputation. The origins of Old River Road's haunted legacy are deeply rooted in the region's dark past. During the 18th and 19th centuries, this stretch of highway was home to some of the most opulent and powerful plantations in the South. These estates, built on the backs of enslaved labor, were centers of wealth and refinement, but they were also places of suffering, where the cries of the oppressed were swallowed by the humid bayou air. The legacy of this pain has never faded, and many believe that the road itself has absorbed the sorrow of those who lived and died along its path. Some say that the very soil beneath the asphalt is soaked in the blood of those who met untimely ends, their spirits forever bound to the land they once toiled upon. Beyond the plantations, Old River Road is also steeped in local folklore that adds to its ominous reputation. One of the most enduring legends speaks of a phantom carriage that roams the road under the cover of darkness, its lanterns flickering as it glides silently through the mist. Witnesses describe the sound of hooves echoing against the pavement, followed by the creaking of wooden wheels, only for the carriage to vanish the moment they try to follow it. Some believe it is the remnant of a tragic event from the 1800s, when a wealthy plantation owner's family was lost in a carriage accident that claimed their lives in a single, horrifying instant. Others insist that the carriage is not merely a ghostly echo of the past, but something far more sinister, a harbinger of doom that appears before those who are about to meet their fate. Another chilling tale that haunts Old River Road is that of the crying woman of the bayou, a spectral figure said to appear on moonlit nights, her long, flowing dress trailing behind her as she walks the roadside. Some say she is the ghost of a woman who lost her children in a tragic fire that consumed her plantation home, her grief so great that she still searches for them along the road where they were last seen. Others believe she is the spirit of a runaway slave, forever trapped between the past and present, her anguished cries carried by the wind. Whatever the truth may be, those who have encountered her speak of an overwhelming sense of sorrow and dread, as though the road itself mourns the tragedies that have unfolded upon it. As we journey through the haunted history of Old River Road, we will uncover the chilling stories that have made this stretch of highway a place where the veil between worlds is at its thinnest. From the ghostly figures that roam the grounds of the plantations to the unexplained phenomena that have left even the most skeptical investigators shaken, Old River Road is more than just a scenic drive, it is a corridor of terror, where the past lingers in ways that defy explanation. The tragic history of Old River Road's plantations. Old River Road is more than just a scenic stretch of highway winding through the heart of St. James Parish, it is a corridor of history, where the echoes of the past still linger in the humid bayou air. Lined with grand antebellum plantations, the road was once a thriving hub of Louisiana's sugar industry, a place where wealth and power flourished at the expense of untold suffering. Each of these historic homes carries its own unique legacy, but the blood-soaked history of the region has left behind a darkness that refuses to fade, making Old River Road one of the most haunted highways in the United States. Among the most infamous plantations along Old River Road is Laura Plantation, a sprawling estate built in the early 1800s by Guillaume Duparc, a French Creole sugar planter. Laura Plantation is renowned for its well-preserved architecture and its vivid oral history, which includes tales of voodoo, betrayal, and the lingering presence of those who once lived and died within its walls. One of the most harrowing stories associated with the plantation is that of Marie Laveau, a voodoo priestess whose influence over the region was both feared and revered. According to legend, Marie Laveau once lived on the outskirts of Laura Plantation, offering protection to enslaved workers in exchange for offerings of food and candles. It is said that her spirit still watches over the land, her presence felt in the form of strange occurrences that have left visitors and staff alike shaken. Another plantation that has become infamous for its haunting tales is Ormond Plantation, built in 1754 and once owned by the influential Durald family. The house is said to be haunted by the ghost of a young woman named Amélie Durald, who is believed to have taken her own life after being forbidden from marrying a man of lower social status. Visitors have reported hearing the faint sound of a woman's sobs echoing through the halls, and some claim to see a pale, spectral figure standing at the foot of the grand staircase, her eyes filled with sorrow. The grounds of Ormond are also said to be haunted by the spirits of enslaved workers who perished under brutal conditions, their anguished cries carried by the wind on quiet nights. Perhaps the most chilling story comes from St. James Parish, where the road was once the site of a massacre during the turbulent years of the Civil War. In 1863, Union forces marched through the region, setting fire to plantations and freeing enslaved people in their wake. However, the aftermath of this destruction left behind a trail of vengeance and bloodshed. Former Confederate soldiers, bitter over the loss of their homes and livelihoods, formed vigilante groups that targeted freed slaves and Union sympathizers. Some say the road itself is haunted by the spectral echoes of these violent encounters, where the cries of the dead still haunt the night air. Over the years, these tragedies have woven a tapestry of sorrow and unrest, giving rise to the road's reputation as a place where the past refuses to rest. Whether it is the lingering presence of the enslaved workers who suffered under the weight of history or the restless spirits of those who perished in the war's aftermath, one thing remains certain: those who travel Old River Road may find themselves forever changed by the whispers of the past, a reminder that some roads are haunted not just by ghosts, but by the sins of those who walked them long ago. The phantom carriage of Old River Road. Among the many eerie legends that haunt Old River Road, none are as deeply entrenched in local folklore as the phantom carriage, a ghostly apparition that is said to appear on moonlit nights, gliding silently through the mist-laden air. Unlike the more traditional ghostly figures that haunt the plantations, the phantom carriage is an unsettling presence that defies explanation, its appearance often accompanied by the distant sound of hooves striking the pavement, and the faint glow of lanterns flickering in the darkness. Witnesses describe a black, horse-drawn hearse, its wooden frame weathered with age, its wheels creaking with an unnatural rhythm. Some claim that the driver is visible, his face obscured by shadow, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, while others insist that the carriage moves on its own, pulled by skeletal horses that seem to be more mist than flesh. The origins of the phantom carriage are as murky as the bayou itself, but local legend tells of a tragic event that took place in the late 1800s. According to the tale, a wealthy plantation owner's daughter was engaged to a man from a rival family, a union that was bitterly opposed by both households. On the night of her supposed elopement, the young woman was reportedly found dead along Old River Road, her body lying in the dirt with no signs of struggle or foul play. Some say she was poisoned by her family to prevent the marriage, while others whisper that she was cursed by a vengeful rival who wished to keep the lovers apart. Regardless of the truth, the story has given rise to one of the most chilling hauntings along the road. Since the legend first spread, countless travelers have reported encountering the phantom carriage under the cover of darkness. Some claim to see it emerging from the thick fog that rolls in from the nearby bayou, its lanterns casting an eerie glow that seems to flicker unnaturally. Others describe the sound of hooves approaching from behind, only for the carriage to vanish the moment they turn to look. One particularly harrowing account comes from a local historian who was researching the road's history in the 1970s. As he drove late at night, he noticed a faint glow in his rearview mirror, followed by the unmistakable sound of a horse-drawn carriage catching up to him. Thinking it was a reenactment or a prank, he slowed his car, expecting to see a group of performers or tourists. Instead, as he turned to look, the road behind him was completely empty, the only sound being the faint echo of hooves fading into the distance. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Old River Road, hoping to uncover evidence of the phantom carriage's existence. Some believe it is nothing more than an optical illusion, a trick of the mist and moonlight that plays on the minds of those who travel the road at night. Others argue that the carriage is a residual haunting, a replay of a tragic event that is doomed to repeat itself for eternity. Whatever the truth may be, one thing remains certain: those who travel Old River Road may find themselves forever changed by the sight of the spectral carriage that should not be there, a grim reminder that some stories refuse to fade into obscurity. The crying woman of the bayou. Among the many chilling legends that surround Old River Road, few are as hauntingly tragic as the story of the crying woman of the bayou. This spectral figure, described as a woman in a flowing white dress, is said to appear along the roadside late at night, her anguished sobs carried by the humid bayou breeze. Locals whisper that she is the ghost of a woman who lost her children to a fire that consumed her home, leaving her to wander the road in eternal despair, forever searching for the ones she could not save. Others believe she is the spirit of a runaway slave, her cries echoing through the swamps as she seeks a freedom she was never able to attain in life. The legend of the crying woman has persisted for decades, with countless reports from travelers, residents, and paranormal investigators who claim to have encountered her. Many describe the same eerie experience, driving along Old River Road late at night when they suddenly hear the sound of a woman sobbing in the distance. The crying grows louder the closer they get, until they spot her standing just off the roadside, her long hair hanging in damp strands, her head bowed in grief. When they stop to offer help, she vanishes into the darkness, leaving behind only the lingering sound of her sorrow. Some witnesses claim that the air grows unbearably cold in her presence, as if the very atmosphere is thick with her pain. Others speak of a faint scent of lilac, a fragrance that many believe was once worn by the woman in life, still clinging to the road long after her death. One of the most harrowing accounts comes from a group of college students who were driving along Old River Road in the early 2000s. As they made their way through the winding path, one of the passengers suddenly gasped and pointed toward the roadside. "Look at her," she whispered, her voice trembling. The driver slowed down, and the group saw a woman standing in the mist, her figure barely visible through the thick fog. She was dressed in what appeared to be a tattered white gown, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. The students, shaken but curious, decided to pull over and approach her. As they stepped out of the car, the woman turned toward them, her face obscured by the darkness. Before they could speak, she vanished, leaving behind only the sound of her sobs, which seemed to grow louder for a brief moment before fading into silence. paranormal investigators have attempted to document the crying woman's presence, setting up audio equipment along Old River Road in hopes of capturing evidence of her sorrowful wails. Some claim to have recorded what they describe as faint, distorted voices, speaking in hushed tones that seem to plead for help. Others have captured the sound of a woman's weeping, a mournful cry that grows louder the further one drives along the road. Whether these recordings are the result of residual energy, a lingering presence, or simply the power of suggestion, one thing remains certain: those who hear the crying woman's voice may find themselves forever haunted by the sorrow that lingers on Old River Road. The shadow figure of Old River Road. Among the many unsettling experiences reported along Old River Road, none are as unnerving as the legend of the shadow figure, a tall, gaunt silhouette that seems to glide through the air rather than walk. Unlike the more defined apparitions such as the crying woman or the phantom carriage, this entity manifests not as a recognizable ghost but as a shifting void that blends seamlessly with the darkness. Witnesses describe a tall figure cloaked in black, its form flickering at the edges, as if it is not entirely present in the physical world. Some claim to see it standing motionless among the towering cypress trees, watching, waiting. Others report that it moves, gliding soundlessly through the mist, vanishing the moment it is noticed. The legend of the shadow figure has persisted for decades, with accounts dating back to the early 20th century. Some believe it is merely a trick of the light, a distortion caused by the interplay of fog and moonlight that gives the illusion of movement. Others, however, insist that it is something far more sinister, a presence that does not belong to the world of the living, yet refuses to cross into the afterlife. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: those who have encountered the shadow figure describe an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the air itself grows heavier in its presence. One of the earliest documented encounters with the shadow figure comes from a local historian who visited Old River Road in the 1940s to document the region's plantation history. As he wandered through the overgrown paths near the remnants of a long-abandoned estate, he noticed an unusual figure standing near the entrance of a crumbling mausoleum. At first, he assumed it was another visitor, perhaps a fellow researcher or a groundskeeper. But as he drew closer, he realized that the figure was not moving, not breathing, not reacting in any way to his presence. It simply stood there, its form blending into the darkness like a void against the moonlit night. The historian later recounted that as he approached, the air around him grew unnaturally cold, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled over him. He tried to speak, to ask the figure if they needed assistance, but the words caught in his throat. Before he could take another step, the figure vanished, disappearing as though it had never been there at all. The historian, shaken by the experience, refused to return to Old River Road, claiming that he had encountered something that defied logic and reason. One particularly harrowing account comes from a group of paranormal investigators who visited the road in the early 2000s. Equipped with thermal imaging cameras and electromagnetic field detectors, the team set out to document any unexplained phenomena. As they explored the deeper sections of the road, they recorded a sudden and inexplicable drop in temperature, accompanied by a sharp spike in electromagnetic activity. Then, one of the team members noticed movement on the edge of their camera's view, an indistinct, shadowy figure standing just beyond the range of their lights. The team, determined to investigate further, approached the figure, but as they did, the camera feed cut out entirely. When they reached the spot where the figure had been, they found nothing, no footprints, no signs of movement, only the cold, empty air. Despite their efforts, they were unable to capture any further evidence of the entity, though they all reported feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched. The phantom hitchhiker of Old River Road. Among the many eerie occurrences reported along Old River Road, one of the most chilling is the legend of the phantom hitchhiker, a spectral figure that appears on the roadside only to vanish without a trace. Unlike typical ghostly apparitions, this hitchhiker does not seek shelter or transportation. She seeks something far more unsettling. Described as a young woman in a long, tattered dress, she is said to stand alone in the darkness, her expression frozen in sorrow, her arms outstretched as if pleading for help that will never come. Some claim she appears only under the cover of thick fog, while others swear she emerges from the mist with an unnatural glow, her form flickering like a candle struggling to stay lit. The legend of the phantom hitchhiker has persisted for decades, with countless travelers recounting their encounters with the mysterious woman. One of the earliest documented cases dates back to the 1930s, when a local farmer, returning home from a late-night trip to town, reported seeing a woman standing at the edge of the road. Thinking she was a stranded traveler, he stopped his wagon and asked if she needed a ride. As she climbed into the back, he noticed something strange. Her dress was soaked with water, her skin unnaturally cold to the touch. When he turned to speak to her, she was gone. The farmer, shaken by the experience, never spoke of it again. Since then, numerous others have reported similar encounters. Some describe picking up a hitchhiker who vanishes before they reach their destination, leaving behind only the lingering scent of damp earth and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Others speak of the woman appearing in their rearview mirrors, her face contorted in silent anguish before she disappears the moment they attempt to look directly at her. One particularly harrowing account comes from a truck driver who was traveling through St. James Parish in the 1980s. As he drove late at night, he noticed a woman standing alone on the roadside, her hand raised in a silent plea. Thinking she was stranded, he pulled over and opened the passenger door. The woman climbed in without a word, her eyes fixed straight ahead. The moment she sat down, the temperature in the cab plummeted, the radio cutting out in a burst of static. When the driver glanced at the woman, he noticed that she was not breathing. His hands trembled as he reached out to speak to her, only to find that she had vanished. The passenger seat was empty, the door still locked from the inside. The driver, too shaken to continue his journey, turned the truck around and never returned to Old River Road. Whether the phantom hitchhiker is the spirit of a lost soul or merely a figment of collective fear, one thing remains certain: those who travel Old River Road may find themselves forever changed by the eerie presence that seems to walk the road, waiting for someone to pick her up. The phantom carriage of Old River Road. Among the many unsettling encounters reported along Old River Road, few are as deeply ingrained in local folklore as the phantom carriage, a spectral hearse that glides silently through the mist-laden night, its lanterns flickering in the darkness. Unlike traditional ghostly apparitions, this carriage does not appear to be driven by a living person, nor does it belong to any known historical reenactment or local tradition. Instead, it is described as a weathered, black-draped hearse, pulled by skeletal horses whose hollow eyes glow faintly in the dim moonlight. Some claim to see figures inside the carriage, shrouded silhouettes that seem to stare into the void, their faces obscured by the darkness. Others insist that the carriage is empty, its presence a harbinger of misfortune, appearing only to those who are about to meet an untimely fate. The legend of the phantom carriage is said to date back to the post-Civil War era, when Louisiana's plantations lay in ruins and the road became a path of mourning. It is believed that the carriage once belonged to a wealthy plantation owner who, in the aftermath of the war, lost his entire family to a violent massacre. The tragedy left the man broken, his grief so profound that he reportedly commissioned a carriage to carry the bodies of his loved ones one last time before burial. According to local lore, the man himself died shortly after, and ever since, the carriage has been seen roaming Old River Road, gliding through the fog without a driver, its wheels creaking as it passes through the bayou. Countless travelers have reported seeing the phantom carriage under the cover of night, often describing the same eerie sequence of events. The sound of hooves striking the pavement grows louder, the glow of lanterns flickering in the distance before the carriage itself emerges from the mist. Some claim the horses' eyes are filled with fire, their movements unnaturally swift. Others describe the carriage as moving with a slow, deliberate pace, as though it is carrying its passengers to a destination long forgotten by time. The phantom music of Old River Road. Among the many eerie occurrences reported along Old River Road, one of the most unsettling is the legend of the phantom music, a haunting melody that seems to drift through the air without a source. Unlike the more visual hauntings, such as the phantom carriage or the crying woman of the bayou, the music is an auditory phenomenon that defies logic, filling the night with melodies that should not exist. Travelers, paranormal investigators, and locals alike have described hearing faint strains of music echoing through the dense cypress trees, sometimes resembling old funeral dirges, other times taking the form of slow, sorrowful lullabies. The earliest documented accounts of the phantom music date back to the early 20th century, when residents of St. James Parish spoke of hearing a distant violin playing itself in the dead of night. Some believed the sound belonged to a former plantation owner's lost love, a woman who had been forbidden from marrying a man of lower social standing. Others claimed the music was the lingering sorrow of the enslaved workers who once toiled under the oppressive weight of the sugar plantations, their suffering immortalized in melodies that still echo through the bayou. Regardless of the theory, one thing remained undeniable. Those who heard the music described the same unsettling sensation, an overwhelming sense of grief that settled over them like a heavy fog, as though they were intruding upon a sorrow that had never been resolved. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a group of musicians who traveled to Old River Road in the 1980s, hoping to record ambient sounds for a documentary on Louisiana's haunted locations. As they set up their equipment near the ruins of an abandoned plantation, they began to hear the faint strains of a violin playing in the distance. Thinking it was a fellow traveler or a local artist practicing late at night, they followed the sound, only to find themselves standing in the middle of the road, the music growing louder and more distinct. Then, without warning, the melody changed. What had once been a mournful tune transformed into a chaotic, discordant cacophony, as if the music itself had turned malevolent. The group, unnerved by the shift in tone, quickly packed up their equipment and fled, later admitting that the recording they had captured was unlike anything they had ever heard before. The violin's notes were impossibly fast, the melody shifting between sorrow and rage in an instant, as though the spirit behind the music was trapped in an eternal cycle of grief and fury. The phantom children of Old River Road. Among the many eerie occurrences reported along Old River Road, none are as deeply unsettling as the legend of the phantom children, ghostly figures of young boys and girls who are said to appear on the roadside, their laughter and playfulness masking a far more tragic past. Unlike the more defined hauntings of the phantom carriage or the crying woman, the children seem to materialize unexpectedly, often near the overgrown paths that lead to the ruins of long-abandoned plantation homes. Witnesses describe hearing the faint sound of children running through the underbrush, their giggles carried by the wind, only to find no one when they turned to look. Others claim to see the children standing at the edge of the road, their small forms illuminated by the glow of passing headlights before vanishing into the night. The origins of the phantom children's haunting are deeply entwined with the history of the plantations that once lined Old River Road. During the 19th century, enslaved families lived and toiled on these estates, their children growing up in the shadow of oppression and suffering. Some believe that the spirits of these children still roam the land, their innocence preserved in death, as they wander the very grounds where they once lived. Others speculate that the children were victims of a tragic fire or disease outbreak, their deaths leaving behind an energy that continues to echo through the bayou. One particularly harrowing tale speaks of a group of children who were sent to the swamps to gather herbs for a voodoo ritual gone wrong. According to legend, the children were never seen again, their voices now said to call out in the dead of night, searching for the way home. One of the most chilling encounters comes from a local historian who was conducting research on the region's plantation history in the 1970s. As he walked along the roadside, he suddenly heard the unmistakable sound of children laughing in the distance. Thinking it was a group of local kids playing in the woods, he called out, asking if they needed help. The laughter stopped instantly, replaced by an unsettling silence. Moments later, a faint voice whispered his name, though no one was near. When he turned to leave, the tragic tale of the crying woman of the bayou. Of all the chilling legends that haunt Old River Road, none are as deeply tragic or as frequently reported as the story of the crying woman of the bayou, a spectral figure said to wander the roadside, her sobs carried on the wind like a mournful lullaby. Unlike the more fleeting hauntings of the phantom carriage or the shadow figure, the crying woman is often described in vivid, heart-wrenching detail, her presence a constant reminder of the suffering that has shaped the land. Witnesses speak of a woman in a long, tattered dress, her dark hair matted against her pale face, her eyes filled with an unending sorrow. Some claim to see her standing motionless beneath the gnarled branches of the cypress trees, while others describe her as a figure who paces the roadside, her hands clutching at her chest as if trying to hold in a pain that never fades. The origins of the crying woman's haunting are steeped in tragedy, with multiple versions of her story circulating through local folklore. One of the most widely accepted tales speaks of a woman named Evelyn LeClaire, a young bride who lived on a plantation near Old River Road in the mid-1800s. According to legend, Evelyn was engaged to a wealthy planter's son, a match that was frowned upon by her lover's family, who sought to end the relationship at all costs. Some say she was poisoned by her fiancé's mother, who feared losing her family's fortune to an outsider. Others believe she was forced into exile, cast out by those who sought to separate her from the man she loved. The most harrowing version, however, claims that Evelyn was murdered by her own lover, who, under pressure from his family, chose to end her life rather than defy his kin. Her body was said to have been dumped in the bayou, her final cries lost to the swamp's depths. The phantom hitchhiker of Old River Road. One of the most persistent and deeply unsettling legends associated with Old River Road is the story of the phantom hitchhiker, a spectral figure that appears on the roadside, only to vanish the moment it is acknowledged. Unlike the more benign ghostly hitchhikers reported in other parts of the country, this entity is often described as unnervingly silent, its presence marked not by speech but by an overwhelming sense of sorrow and impending doom. Travelers who have encountered the hitchhiker describe a chilling sequence of events, seeing a lone figure standing in the middle of the road, stopping to offer a ride, only for the passenger to disappear before they can be reached. One of the earliest recorded accounts of the phantom hitchhiker comes from a local farmer who lived near Old River Road in the early 1900s. He described driving home late one night when he spotted a woman standing at the edge of the road, her long dress soaked in water, her face pale and drawn. Thinking she was a stranded traveler, he pulled over and offered her a ride. The woman, silent and motionless, climbed into the back of his wagon without a word. As he drove forward, the air in the wagon grew unbearably cold, the scent of damp earth and decay filling the space around him. When he turned to check on the woman, she was gone. No footprints, no sign of movement, just the lingering sensation of being watched, as if something unseen had been there all along. Since that night, countless others have reported similar encounters. Some describe seeing a young woman, her dark hair matted against her face, her eyes filled with tears. Others speak of an elderly man, his tattered coat billowing despite the absence of wind. Some say the hitchhiker appears only under the cover of thick fog, standing motionless as if waiting for someone to recognize them. Others claim the figure steps onto the road just as their vehicle approaches, only to vanish into thin air the moment they attempt to stop. The phantom musician of Old River Road. Among the many eerie occurrences reported along Old River Road, one of the most perplexing is the legend of the phantom musician, a spectral presence that is said to play haunting melodies that should not exist. Unlike the more traditional ghostly figures that haunt the road, the phantom musician makes its presence known not through sight, but through sound, soft, sorrowful notes that drift through the night air, carried on the wind like the memories of those who once lived and died along the road's cursed path. The origins of the phantom musician are as shrouded in mystery as the road itself. Some believe the musician was a former slave who once played for the plantation owners, his songs a rare moment of solace in a life otherwise filled with suffering. Others speculate that the music belongs to a runaway musician who sought refuge in the swamps, only to vanish under unexplained circumstances. A few even believe the phantom musician is not a single entity, but the collective presence of long-forgotten musicians, those who once filled the plantation halls with their melodies, now bound to the road where their lives ended in tragedy. One of the earliest documented encounters with the phantom musician comes from a group of travelers in the late 19th century, who reported hearing faint strains of a violin as they passed through the bayou. The music, they claimed, grew louder the deeper they drove, until it reached a crescendo of sorrowful notes that filled the air with an overwhelming sense of grief. When they stopped to investigate, they found no sign of a musician, only the sound of the violin fading into the night, as if the player had simply vanished into the mist. Since that night, countless others have reported similar experiences. Some describe the faint sound of a piano playing itself in the distance, its notes melancholic and unexplainable, while others speak of ghostly voices singing in hushed tones, their words just beyond comprehension. One particularly harrowing account comes from a group of researchers who visited the road in the early 2000s. As they explored the remnants of an abandoned plantation, they recorded what they described as a faint, distorted violin melody drifting through the air. The music grew louder the closer they ventured toward the road, until it was accompanied by the faint sound of a second instrument joining in, though no visible presence was ever found. If you enjoyed this journey through one of Louisiana's most terrifying stretches of highway, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever encountered something unexplainable on Old River Road or another haunted location? What other cursed roads and haunted highways would you like to see explored in future episodes? Your curiosity fuels this channel, and I can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the past isn't as far behind us as we think. Thank you for watching, and may your own journeys through history be filled with wonder, mystery, and just the right amount of eerie anticipation. Good night, and sweet dreams, if you dare.